Hey everybody, and welcome to another ranking video. This is where I take a look back at the last 10 new to me board games that I have played, and I rank them from my least favourite up to my most favourite. Now, as usual, there is a diverse range of games here. Games going back pre the year 2000 and some pretty new games too from last year. Before I get started on these 10 games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so at number 10 I have Strike, or more specifically Harry Potter Strike. Now, I'd never actually played Strike before this occasion. This is a pure dice chucking game where you essentially have a bowl. You're throwing dice into the bowl, trying to create pairs by not only the ones that you've just thrown, but also by nudging other dice already in the bowl. I believe you're trying to deplete your opponent's hand of dice and keep going that way essentially until everybody has been knocked out. The Harry Potter version simply adds a few little twists and turns by adding these powers on certain faces of those dice. They're pretty minimal, don't change the game too much, and the gameplay experience is the same essentially, which is just chucking dice. So I struggle to see the gameplay here. It is pretty much pure luck. Not really something I'd lean towards playing or something I'd suggest playing, but if somebody really wanted to play it that bad, I would, because it is so easy and you can just switch your brain off and throw some dice. So that is Strike at number 10. At number 9, I have Star Wars The Clone Wars. Now, this is in the Pandemic series of cooperative games where you're working together to traverse this map, obviously set in the Star Wars galaxy. And in this one, instead of fighting off plague cubes, etc., like with the original Pandemic, you are fighting off, I believe, the Empire. And you're basically trying to tackle the big boss, who is a modular thing you can add into the game depending on the difficulty you want to play. The thing that weirded me out a little bit about this game is that there was no card sharing, because I actually thought that was the coolest part of Pandemic, where you had to puzzle things out and swap cards, etc. This one you didn't do that, which I thought was a bit of a missed opportunity, but essentially you're trying to save up currencies of different types to conquer the bad guys. Generally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of Pandemic or cooperative games in general, so take that into consideration, and I'm not even a fan of Star Wars, so again, that's not going to help my experience with this game. But I can see if you do like cooperative games and you do like Star Wars, then you're probably going to have a reasonably good time with this one, but it's just not one for me. At number 8, I have First in Flight. So I think this one's going to be somewhat controversial because this is doing quite well in terms of critical reception. This is a deck building, push your luck style game as you're trying to construct the first aircrafts and trying to fly as far as you can. Now, this game has the cool scoring system that you might be familiar with in games like Colosseum, where only your best flight is your score. So it doesn't matter if you score, say, 20 points in the first time you fly. If you score 17 points in the second time you fly, your score will still be 20, because that's where you've kind of set the bar. I really like that system. However, I feel like in First in Flight, they missed an opportunity by not compensating you if you don't beat your best score, essentially. So I did compare this with Quacks of Quedlinburg in my review by saying, like, at least in Quacks of Quedlinburg, if you go bust or if you don't have a successful round, you at least get something in return and then can invest in making your deck or your pool better. In this one, you cannot do that. I also thought it was a little bit too underwhelming at times because you go bust too frequently. There's a lot of downtime in certain points in the game, and it just didn't quite land for me. I thought it was a bit of a missed opportunity with a cool theme, with certainly a gorgeous looking production. The designer, I believe, did tell me that maybe I'm approaching the game slightly wrong and thinking that I should be flying a little less, a little less frequently and prepare my deck a bit more carefully. But for me, that's the point of the game. You want to fly as often as you can because that's where the fun of the game is. But it just didn't quite pay off. So yeah, not one for me. That is First in Flight at number 8. At number 7, I have Starlink. Now, this is a party style game, a drawing game where you have this really nice looking board full of all these stars, and then you're given like a clue or a word on a card, and you are trying to draw that shape using constellations by connecting stars with each other. If your opponent gets it correct, then they get a point and you also get a point. That kind of thing. It is certainly unique. It's a bit of a gimmick that I think it has its legs. I don't think it's going to stand up to repeated plays, at least in a short succession, because, you know, it's very samey. But I did like this twist on the game where you are rewarded for keeping the constellations in a small proximity. So you have this kind of little round kind of measurement gauge that says if you fit your constellation in that circle, then you'll get some extra points. Because generally speaking, if you can look at the board at a macro level, you can draw pretty much anything because you have so many options. But keeping it small is where the difficulty lies. So definitely a contender for being one of the unique games that I've played of the year, and it will certainly be on that shortlist. But again, I think the gameplay is a little bit too much of a gimmick, and there's actually not too much of a game there. At number 6, I have House of the Dragon Sky of Fire. Now, this is obviously set in the Game of Thrones universe. It's a deck building game where you are trying to get your character and your dragon along this track and to the Iron Throne before your opponents do. Very standard deck building stuff where you are given a bunch of basic cards, currency cards to buy other cards from a market to make you more efficient and to move your dragon and character faster and faster along this track, obviously trying to race to the finish. Very standard stuff here, but I was quite impressed with how smooth this game operated, because there's kind of no rules minutia at all. The rules actually all fit on a single page of paper. So as a kind of an introduction, or kind of my first deck building game, this is actually quite a good option. Now, I don't feel like the longevity is there, because you do see everything quite quickly, and there is literally one path to victory. But it works, it's certainly functional, and it's way better than I thought it would be, because I only picked up this game because I'm a huge House of the Dragon fan, and I wanted this just as a collector's item, when in reality the game actually functions quite well. And I think if non-board gamers pick this game up simply because of the IP, it could be a good gateway to start trying more board games out, because deck building isn't a mainstream mechanism, and this could certainly again bridge that gap. So yeah, Skyfire, a decent deck building game, and surprisingly so. At number 5, I have Blockers. Now, this is a game that I heard nothing about, so my brother picked this one up, and it's surprisingly good. I mean, at least way better than it should be looking at it. So you basically have this grid, and you have different symbols on the kind of vertical and horizontal axes, and you have a token matching several of the different parts on the board. And all you do on your turn is you place one of your markers on the board and control that space. And what you're trying to do is you are trying to create groups of your own shape, because for every separate group that you have, no matter what size they are, you are essentially going to gain a point, and points are a bad thing in this game. So you could essentially look at this as a negative point for each group you collect. And it's all about trying to prioritize which placement you do first, how to use these tokens, because each token has a few options, when to cut people off, and it even has a few little wrinkles in the game where you can actually kick people off their spots to guarantee that place for yourself, to hopefully connect things together, but you'll start gaining other negative points that way, and kind of the more you do it, the more negative points you accrue. Yeah, very smooth, certainly family friendly. I think it definitely plays better at the higher player count, because it's so much more competition and the board gets gobbled up way quicker. It's a bit more fierce, but it works. And these kind of games I'm enjoying at the moment. And I have only played this at 3 players so far, but I am almost quite excited actually to play this one at 4 or even 5 players, which I believe the game does cater to. So that is Blockers at number 5. At number 4, I have Enchanted Plumes. Now, this is the kind of card game that I really enjoy and that I kind of feel like I have to have in my collection. So, I love my small box card games, and this one feels quite distinct to a lot of the other ones I have in my collection, because all you're doing in your hand or with your cards is you're playing them on the table in front of you, trying to gain as many points as you can by making these kind of like peacock plumes that kind of you start wide and you funnel down into one card essentially. You start with 5 cards, then 4, then 3, then 2, and then finally 1. But the twist on this game is the top row is going to gain you negative points. So essentially you want to be playing the low valued cards on top and work your way down to the high valued cards. But of course all the other players are trying to do the same thing. And there's a further restriction, because every colour that you play on the top row are the only colours that you can use in the future rows. So do you want to be narrow-minded and only leave yourself with a few options, or do you want to spread wider of course, maybe gain more negative points, but give yourself more flexibility. And you're always racing against that tempo of the deck running out, and the game can end very abruptly, and you can be caught off guard with a lot of negative points by not completing those peacocks. And as a further incentive, if you complete the peacocks by actually finishing the whole reverse triangle, then you will get a point for every single card in that particular plume. Very clever. I can see this one growing or climbing on my rankings of card games because I think it's extremely clever, and I like that back and forth, almost Lost City feels of giving cards away to this shared market, which could kind of lay the foundation of opponents' turns as they grab them from you. So again, constant back and forth here, which I really enjoy. So this one again, very narrowly missed my my chairman's commendation, but I think, to be honest, sooner rather than later, it will creep up into that bracket and will eventually get a commendation. So that is Enchanted Plumes at number 4. At number 3, I have another card game with Gap. Now, much like Enchanted Plumes, this one was very much on the cusp of getting a commendation. I just feel like I need to play a bit more and see if it stands up to the test of time. But this one, I think the cool thing about this game is the scoring system where you're collecting different suits of cards. Your best suit or suits that you collect are going to be positive points, but the lowest suits that you collect are going to be negative points. You're going to deduce them or deduct them from your positive points. But if you balance everything perfectly, then they're all going to be positive points. So it does have this kind of knife edge gambling system where do you want to go all in and get all positive points, or do you want to play it a bit safer and just take those negative points on the chin? But the way you collect these cards is by playing through this this hand of cards that you do not replenish. So it does have that kind of six-nymphed feel to it, where you're playing cards. If you match the number, you collect all the same number and play it in front of you. If they don't match the number, but you have adjacent numbers to it in the market, then you collect those in front of you. Or if you don't match any of those, then you'll simply shed the card completely and not score it and put it in that communal market. I think this game's going to be a bit easier to explain via a review, which I have recorded, so I'll be sure to drop that review very shortly. But yeah, this is, again, a small box card game, very easy to play, but it does have a twist or two that I enjoy. And again, more, for me, more the merrier with games like this. So that is Gap at number 3. Okay, so let's get into the top 2 games now, and this is where my commendations begin. So 2 fantastic games here. And at number 2, I have Empire's End. Now, this one wasn't on my radar at all. My brother picked this one up. And I'm quite surprised that happened because this, for me, is what I love about these style of lightweight Euro games. And I suppose another big thing that's prevented me picking this one up or even paying it attention is that the designer is John Declare. And I don't think I've played a single John Declare game that I've enjoyed so far until now. Now, this one is a kind of a disaster mitigation style game using the no thanks mechanism, where you are shedding tokens to not take negative cards. And in this one, you have this array of buildings which will kind of generate you resource or income or build an engine in different ways as long as those buildings are not destroyed. But each round, there's going to be a card that comes out that says, if you take this card, you're going to destroy this certain building. And therefore, you're shedding these tokens to not take it. But of course, with each token that you shed is an incentive for the next person to take that card. And what I love about this game is that the tokens are actually different. It's not just a currency like in a game like No Thanks. They actually have practical uses. For example, they allow you to repair your buildings, or they allow you to compete in this separate combat phase, which will let you generate more points and give you extra bonuses. There's some engine building as well, as you build this tableau and tuck cards beneath your engine. It's just a really well constructed game, and exactly the kind of game and weight and involvement that I want in my collection at the moment. So this one ticks so many boxes for me, and I'm just so glad that I had a chance to play this one, and I'm really eager to play this one some more because I enjoyed it that much. And again, completely caught me off guard because I wasn't really sure what to expect with this one. And I thought that building a bigger game around that no thanks mechanism would just convolute the system rather than enhance it. And I think this game actually just did it remarkably well. So that is Empire's End at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Patterns, a mandala game. So if you are a regular consumer of my content, you might know that Mandala is probably my favourite two-player game of all time. And when I heard Patterns was coming out, I thought, is it going to be as good as the original? Probably not, but I have to give it a go because I love the original so much. And what I love about this game is that it is so distinctively different to the original, because it's more of an abstract pattern building game, which you're shifting tiles around this board, connecting chains, but it does keep the original Mandala scoring system, where the first set you collect to is worth 1 point, the second collect is worth 2 points, third set 3 points, and so on. Therefore, you and your opponent are working at different paces, really, and things that could be worth a lot to you are not worth much to your opponent, and vice versa. Lots of turn angst here, lots of prioritization, just a brilliantly and well-defined game that you'd think would have been designed a long time ago. So I love it when games come out now that still feel elegant, they still feel pure, but have enough to sink your teeth into. And for me, this is the kind of game that will reward repeated plays with the same person, as you both kind of sharpen each other's skills and kind of build up this bit of a meta game, and again, polish each other and become more and more competitive. So yeah, love this one. And to be honest, it's gone right to the upper echelons of my overall two-player games. I think it is that good, and it's just made me so much more excited knowing that a third Mandala game is coming out this year. So at number 1, I have Patterns. So there we have it, that concludes the video. Hopefully something on here has caught your attention, and I believe I'll be releasing content on most of these games if you want to check them out in further detail. Of course, if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. And you know what, check out my other videos in this series, because you know they're not time-stamped, they're not date relevant, because I play games from all over the kind of time span. So I'm sure there's always something there that can catch your attention. But thanks as always, and I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye-bye.